Okay, hello. I just wanted to make a short video showing you something I've been working on for the next version of Overmind. Now, Overmind is based on, like at its core, it's a single state tree. But on top of that, you kind of like have different tools to manage this state. So you can do, like you have the plain actions, which is normal imperative logic. Then you have the functional API of Overmind, which you can use for certain scenarios. And you also have state charts, which is also good to use for certain scenarios. And this is something I think we forget about state. It's like, it's not just changing the state. We need these different tools on top to more effectively and more expressively change that state. And with, for example, MobX, you are used to using classes, but classes does not fit in the world of immutability, which you have with like Redux. Now, what's kind of cool about Overmind is that we do have a mutational approach like MobX, but the library comes from like a more functional world like Redux. But what it means is that we can actually combine this state tree with using values, like using classes or class instances as values. And this is actually a quite powerful concept because the problem with having like an immutable functional approach is that you can't combine logic with your state value. So for example, if you have a form, on that form you can't have a method like the field values. You can't have an additional method which for example is valid form. You have to create a function that is just named is valid form, and then you have to pass the form into that function. Now the problem is, where do you put that function? And this is where I see also with experience where things go wrong, because figuring out where to put that function is actually very difficult. Maybe you put it inside some utility function, but maybe you have multiple utility functions. Maybe you find like a specific file for that form, but where do you put that file? Should it be a folder named forms, form functions, or whatever? Helpers is a name. And if you are very structured and you have a very clear image on how to do this and how to structure this, that is like really good. But there is another problem as well, and that is when you get new developers into the project, and these new developers aren't able to explore this form. Like they see there is a form state there, but they have no idea what functionality you have related to that form or whatever other entity you might think of. So you don't have that exploratory factor. And looking at the code that Code Sandbox, this is actually a big problem. So for example, a sandbox has a bunch of utility functions, but they are, oh, what happened here? Oops. They are located in very different spots in the code base. And of course, this makes perfect sense for Eves who coded it to begin with. But for the new developers coming into the team now, it's very difficult to understand what is the whole concept of a sandbox. So that is why we are getting to this point now where I hopefully made an argument that you see that classes can have a benefit. Like, I'm not saying that they're better, I'm just saying that they're different and they can have benefits. And with the approach of Overmind, we are able to support this. So I just wanted to show you this now. First of all, here we have just a website, and I've also made another change here. I removed the hover edit state thingy. So when you click all the keys now, it expands as normal, and then you rather hold the control key. So for example, I want to change the page. I hold the the command key. or Control key on Windows, and you edit. And I think this gives a much more smooth experience in the state tree. Anyways, let's create a class. So we have the Overmind. Let's move this down a bit. We have the website here. And what we're going to do is we're just going to do something simple here so that you can see it. So we are going to create a class called user. And this user has a default name of Bob. And then we're going to say that we have a user and we add a new user to our state. And we save that. And what we can see now is that we have a new value here called user, and it actually indicates that it is an instance of a user, which is really, really nice. And if I click it, we see that it's a user and it has the name Bob. So you can just create classes and it will show up in the DevTools like an actual class. How do we like change this thing? So let's create an action here called change username. And with the state, we say state, we have the user, we have the name, and we can change it to Bob2, for example. And let's just run this where we instantiate Overmind, change username. Okay, so let's now see now. We go to actions, we have run that change username action, and we can actually see that it changes the username on that class instance. But what if we wanted to change it from within? So we rather want to have something called change name. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I have to go to the state. On the class, we want something called change name. And we say this.name equals new name. It's a string, new name, for example. And then we say change username. And this is what I mean. Now I'm in exploratory mode. We have this concept of a user, and I can just point to it to figure out what can I do with this user. And I can change its name, and let's pass in Jack. And let's look into the DevTools now. And we can see that it works exactly the same. So pointing to this inside the class actually works with all the tracking and everything. And then you might want to have like a getter instead. So for example, first name is Bob, last name is Saget, and then we get the name, and we do that by returning this.firstName, and oops, and then this.lastName as an example. And then in actions, let's just log it out there. Console.log overmind state user.name. You can save that. Now we have to look into console here. And we see that it states Bob Saget. And if this was used inside the component, this would be tracked automatically. So if you made a change to the first name or the last name, it would work as normal. And I guess we can also do like, we can make these private, which means that when, oops, we point to the user, we only see name there. So I think this is a really powerful concept, especially if you come from the world of object-oriented programming. You can think about the state tree as a node, like it has nodes, which is the base object, like this. And then you have the namespaces, which are state tree nodes. But any entity, like any value you insert into this state tree, that can be a class instance. And as you see, you actually get information about that class instance inside the DevTools, which is super powerful. and it works with tracking in the components and everything. Yeah, so personally, I'm quite excited about this. I'm going to write a guide about this approach. Like, again, you don't have to do this. It's just possible to do it. Like, based on your experience and the problem at hand, you need some state. Like, that's the core of the problem, managing the state. But how you manage that state can be done in different ways. And this is one of the ways you can do it. Okay, so I just wanted to show that. Hopefully it made sense, and this will be released quite soon.